President Trump summoning his cabinet for a meeting at the White House next hour, gathering his policy team for updates on his wide-ranging agenda, all while seeking to seal a deal with Iran, amongst many other things on his plate. So welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino.
Good morning to you, partner.
It's an hour away now from that meeting.
There you go. I'm Bill Hemmer. Yeah, and that meeting coming amid tense talks with Tehran. The two sides trying to nail down the fine details of a mutual agreement hoping to end the fighting. Meanwhile, Iran continues to use the Strait along with his nuclear stockpile as leverage.
Ryan Hook, former U.S. Special Representative for Iran, telling us last hour that Iran's regime faces pressure from all sides, internal and external.
The regime is worried about the people coming back on the street and then putting pressure on the regime that might then possibly, if it were to, cascade and spiral, could bring the regime into a survival mode. Now, if you could have an MOU that would reopen the Strait, that would be very good. But that would just be a narrow first step toward a broader deal that would address the nuclear program, the missiles, and the proxies. So if the talks around the MOU break down, the president can return to the battlefield or restore the naval blockade.
So with all of that, let's get to Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst. He's live in Tel Aviv. Good morning.
Yeah, hey, Dana, good morning. The final details for a possible agreement between the United States and Iran are still being discussed, but regional tension has certainly decreased. There is hope here that ultimately a deal can be reached that would avert a return to war and also address Iran's nuclear program and open the Strait of Hormuz. Regional officials say that implementation of an agreement is even more important than what is being written in a possible deal.
I think there's strong alignment and agreement on what a preliminary draft should look like. I think that, like anything with something like this, it's going to take a couple days to settle on, even down to the disagreements over a word, sentence. So we'll have to work through that. If there's going to be a deal, we're going to have to work through that. But this is, it's either going to be a good deal or there isn't going to be one.
Inside Iran, the internet is starting to be restored after 88 days offline. This does follow a decree announced by Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian to restore connectivity for more than 90 million residents of the Islamic Republic.
Now, when we track connectivity, we're looking at the number of reachable endpoints in a country from outside that country, which is a great way to understand how accessible that country is from the outside. What we've seen is that there has been this gradual restoration that is consistent with what we've seen in past incidents in Iran. This is a process that can take several hours, days, even weeks for the provinces. So it's definitely a stepwise process, but we've seen that that process does appear to have begun.
We're also tracking the conflict between Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, Iran's largest proxy in the region. An Israeli official told Fox News that preparations are underway for the upcoming meeting in Washington on Thursday that will formally mark the start of the military-to-military channel between Israel and Lebanon. The official added that Iran hopes the broader ceasefire will undermine the current efforts between Israel and Lebanon aimed at weakening Hezbollah. Overnight, the IDF struck a series of different positions across southern Lebanon as ground forces are advancing deeper into Hezbollah territory. And Dana, just a few minutes ago, the Israelis issued a new evacuation order for residents of southern Lebanon, an indication that this bombing campaign is expected to resume in the hours ahead. Dana?
Okay, keep us posted, Trey, and stay safe. Thank you.
So back with us today, Rebeccah Heinrichs, Hudson Institute. Rebeccah, good morning to you. On that whole point that Trey was making about implementation, General McGinnis writes this at Fox Digital. He says any new Iran deal should be judged by results, not victory lap rhetoric. America demonstrated overwhelming military power in this war. Iran demonstrated political endurance. He's probably right about those points, both of them, don't you think?
He is. And, listen, I talked to a senior Trump administration official over the weekend about the contours of this deal. And for me, the most important things that he communicated to me was that the United States is not going to remove anything from the region. It's not U.S. forces, not any part of the blockade, not sanctions, until, to the point of that you just read there, Bill, until the Iranians actually demonstrate their part, uphold their part of the negotiation, their deal. Now, we haven't seen any indication that the Iranians are willing to do that. As a matter of fact, to the contrary, we still see Iranians with these fast boats dropping mines in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, their negotiators are supposedly saying that they would help clear the mines. And so we're really, I think, nowhere close to having a meeting of the minds for the implementation at this point, even though there's a lot of optimism that we might be headed in that direction.
What about the Iranians looking the other way, though, on Sunday when America hit back when they were laying those mines? We have Sunday or Monday. Iran didn't really react that much. I mean, are they looking for a way to get to yes?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So you have the politicians that seem to be more interested in ending this, ending this war, and then you have the IRGC that are really all along the coastline data. They have surface-to-air missile launchers there. They've got these fast boats where they can lay mines, and then they have launchers that can attack ships. And then you have the politicians who it's not really clear if they have control over those individuals. And so you did see some Iranian people come out and condemned the United States for supposedly breaking the ceasefire, where the United States said we're only defending our forces in the region. So it's not entirely clear if the politicians who are negotiating have control over those IRGC officials in the region, or if they are, as you say, Dana, kind of looking the other way in the hopes that they can actually come to a meeting of the minds with the U.S.
Yeah, it's really hard to know where the state of mind is for the Iranian people. 92 million now, okay? Here is one science student, all right, computer science student in Tehran. The internet's been out. I mean, they don't even communicate with the outside world. Here's what he said about the possibility of that coming back.
This is 100% a positive thing. The online market is thirsty to go back to its previous state, but this social prosecution that keeps happening significantly harms online businesses. The businesses highly depend on the internet, and every time, these restrictions make life more difficult for them.
No doubt about that. Listen, we were told it was coming back on 2 days ago. It really did not happen. There's some indication now that it's coming back slowly, and there is some service now. I don't know what the truth is, but here's what I think. The leaders of that country, whomever they are, the IRGC, they're afraid of their own people. And that's why they don't want them to communicate among each other or with the outside world, Rebeccah.
Absolutely. And the regime, remember, we cannot forget, as we go through these negotiations, the Iran regime is so incredibly weakened. I mean, not just their military, but their ability to repress their people. I mean, the Israelis and the United States took out a significant number of the individuals who are repressing the people internally. So our greatest weapon, essentially, to see the end of this Iran regime and to see the Iranian people take back their own future is to help the Iranian people. And that's information. They need to be able to communicate with each other. So I was hopeful when I heard that the Iranian regime was going to bring back some internet. But as you say, Bill, it was only a part of it, and then they kind of took it away. They don't have social media. They don't have access. And so that really is a great danger to the regime because it is so weak, and it's because of the incredible pressure that the United States has placed on the regime economically and militarily.
All right, Rebeccah Heinrichs, thanks so much for being on with us today as we wait to hear from the president. Thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.